Hi, my name is Michaeli. I am a founder of the J Street U chapter at Barnard College and Columbia University. And I'm a former member of the National Student Board. Knesset opposition and labor leader Shelly Yachimovich has made a career out of speaking truth to power. Since the age of 15, when the daughter of Holocaust survivors was dismissed from high school for protesting against the school's administration, Yachimovich has earned a reputation as a bold leader and fierce critic. As a prominent journalist for 20 years on Israeli television and radio, she became well known for her outspoken views on socioeconomic issues. Yet by shining a spotlight on the growing grassroots movement known as Four Mothers in the late 1990s, she also influenced Prime Minister Ehud Barak's decision to withdraw Israeli troops from southern Lebanon. In 2005, Yachimovich announced that she was leaving journalism to enter politics, and soon she became one of Labor's newest members of Knesset. She rose through the ranks fighting for Israel's Jewish and democratic principles, notably defending workers' rights and opposing corruption. She surged in popularity among Israeli youth, who, galvanized by the expansive social protests of 2000,
the J Street Conference. I'm honored to be among friends and partners. It is really inspiring to be part of such an important event, especially now when we are in the early stages of new efforts to promote peace and end years of deadlock. And just before Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addresses the United Nations this week, I'll come back to this issue shortly, but first, a few words about Iran. President Obama has taken upon himself a leadership role, and he clearly stated that he is dedicated to preventing Iran from getting nuclear weapons. We have to be carefully, very carefully, tuned to every new message coming from Iran. If there is a chance to stop the Iranian military nuclear project with diplomatic efforts, we should explore it meticulously. But if the Iranians are trying to fool us, it is clear that all options are on the table. This is not just a cliché. We must be neither naive nor paranoid. We know how to defend ourselves and are entitled to the right of self-defense. Iran's nuclear ambitions do not only threaten Israel, they represent a grave danger to the entire world. Yet, we have to remember that using force is not the beginning of the process. If it must come, it comes at the end. And only when all other options have failed. I have great appreciation for President Obama's commitment to remain engaged in the Middle East and to be fully supportive of his allies. We have to bear in mind that our alliance with the United States is a very important strategic asset. President Obama deserves our full support for his efforts on Iran, as well as for his determination to try and achieve a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, I know that you love and support Israel, and at the same time are often critical of Israeli policy. I know what that feels like. As chairwoman of the opposition, my role is that's in Israel's Declaration of Independence. These are the basics. As you know, it is becoming increasingly popular among critics of the peace process to talk about a binational state or a one-state solution. But those who support a binational state are in fact promoting a bleak scenario that completely contradicts the basis of Zionism. The two-state solution is the only viable solution for us. It is the only solution that can allow us to continue to fulfill the Zionist dream of a Jewish and a democratic state. Now, let me tell you how I see the Labour Party's role in this mission. After the elections in January, Prime Minister Netanyahu urged us to join his cabinet. As you may know, my party, the Labour Party, has a habit of joining any government, no matter what. But we could not join this government. The gaps between us were and still are too wide, not only on the peace process, but also on the economy, on social affairs, and the civic agenda. This time, I led my party to take control of the opposition, to pave our way back to power, and to make a much bigger difference in the meantime. On the economy and social affairs, I'm a social democrat. My agenda aims to increase equality through sweeping changes to our tax system, our fiscal policy, and by balancing a free market with government responsibility. On the civic agenda, we support freedom of religion and worship for all. That applies to all streams of Judaism, conservative, Reform, and Orthodox, as well as non-Jews. We support civil marriage, and we support gay rights, including same-sex marriage. We believe in a free and democratic Israel with a strong army and secure borders to defend not only our people, but our values. This is the true Zionist. So from the opposition, the Labour Party today is playing a critical role in creating the political conditions for a successful peace process. We're doing everything possible for peace, but this isn't our only important mission. You may know that Israel was accepted to the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. This officially makes us one of the world's developed economies. We have strong economic growth. We have a thriving high-tech sector. We have a good, public, universal healthcare system. But Israel also has one of the worst levels of income inequality and one of the worst poverty rates in the OECD. Half of the workforce doesn't earn enough to pay taxes. Too many Israelis live in a world that has nothing to do with the startup nation. This inequality is a new experience for our society. It doesn't have to be this way. For example, look at my own family. My parents were Holocaust survivors. They lost their entire families. When my father, Moshe, came to Israel from the ashes of Europe with only the shirt on his back, he became a construction worker. My mother was a high school teacher. They both worked very hard and were proud to support our family with dignity. Today, the same type of family would be condemned to a hopeless life of poverty. I have a very modest ambition that people like my late father, workers of all types, should be able to afford housing and other basic needs and have a decent livelihood. That's why I have legislated 45 laws in the Knesset to promote socioeconomic change by improving the day-to-day lives of ordinary Israelis. I have two lovely children. My son is 22 years old and is serving as an officer in the IDF. My daughter is 18 years old and is high school senior in Tel Aviv. She will all steps to make peace. Poverty and social gaps foster ignorance and racism on both sides. So in a society with huge gaps and deep poverty, the flowers of peace cannot bloom. Sometimes I see comments on my Facebook page with people asking, why are you talking about peace with the Palestinians now, when the rest of the Middle East is burning? These comments are common because we are witnessing civil war and endless bloodshed around us. As Jews, we cannot remain indifferent to the sight of innocent civilians and children being killed by gas. President Obama has made clear that the world must not remain silent when a dictator slaughters his own people with unconventional weapons. Like on the Iranian issue, I respect the president's moral position on the crisis in Syria in extremely complicated political circumstances. The events across the Middle East remind us every day that Israel is still unique in the region. We resolve our internal disputes through a peaceful and democratic system, despite our problems. We should be proud of it. But the chaos across the Middle East is not a good reason to give up on making peace with the Palestinians. We must take control of our future. Making peace is in Israel's best interest. It is in our strategic interest, our economic interest, and our moral interest. This is the Labour Party's position. And our position gives the government a unique political opportunity to move ahead. And so, to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is now on his way to Washington, I say, move ahead. I know that we don't have an easy partner. There will be challenges. It won't be easy. But for the sake of Israel's future, move ahead. We will support you. The people of Israel will support you. And the world will support Israel. Thank you again for your efforts here in Washington, and best of luck in your conference over the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you very much for Shelly Yachimovich, the head of the opposition and the head of the Labour Party in Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Segal, and I'm the diplomatic correspondent for Channel 2 News in Israel. It's a pleasure to me to moderate this panel of Members of Knesset, and I'm calling them to come on stage. In the meantime, when they will arrive, I will tell you that I trust that we are going to a fascinating discussion this morning, especially given the richness of the experience and diversity of opinion that's going to be on stage. Come on, join me, and I will introduce you when you're sitting beside me. In the United States, there is an item you're saying about members of Congress that they are from both sides of the aisle. In Israel, there's a lot of aisles, and they're being crossed all day. So we have here a lot of members of Knesset that are coming from very different and different records, and I very much have the pleasure to introduce the members that are coming on stage. I will start right beside me. There's a new member of Knesset, Merav Michaeli from the Labour Party. Thank you. Merav Michaeli from the Labour Party was joined the Knesset in January 2013. She's a member of the Constitution, Law and Justice Committee, and an alternate member in the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. Before becoming a member, Michaeli was well known as the leader of the local feminist movement, as an Israeli media professional. She was a radio and TV host, and I know her for a long time. Member of Knesset, Ruth Calderon, sitting is with her, is from Yesh Atid party. She also joined the Knesset only in January 2013. Dr. Calderon has been leading efforts in Israel to revive Jewish culture, Hebrew culture, and a pluralistic Israeli Jewish identity. She holds a PhD in Talmudic literature at the University of Jerusalem, and she is recipient of the prestigious ADVOCACY Prize. Thank you very much for joining us. The three gentlemen that are joining me from member of the Knesset are well experienced and have a long way in politics. We have a member of Knesset, Meir Sheetrit from Hatnuah party. He is reserved in Knesset since 1981 and served as a cabinet member holding governmental position as a Minister of Finance, Justice, Education, and Interior. Long way. He is currently a member of the Knesset House, Budget and Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. Sheetrit made Aliyah from Morocco at the age of 9, and he has 2 children and resides with his family in Yavne. And before that, he was in Kadima and in the Likud, so he has a long way in Israeli politics. Member of Knesset Tzachi Hanegbi sitting with us. He's from the Likud Israel Beiteinu party. I didn't use that as well yet. He's a member of the Knesset since 1981, and he served as a cabinet.
88. That's Meir is 81. I'm 88.
Ah, okay, sorry.
But who's counting?
Tzachi is counting. Thank you for... He's serving in the Knesset from 1988, and he has served as member of both Likud and Kadima parties. Hanegbi is formerly the chairman of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. He has previously served as a number of ministerial positions, including Minister of Justice, Health, Internal Security, Transportation, and the Environment, and he lives outside of Jerusalem with his wife and 4 children. Thank you very much for joining us. And the last member of our distinguished panel is a member of Knesset Yitzhak Vaknin from the Shas party. Member of Knesset Vaknin is currently the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset. He's been a member of Knesset since 1996. Throughout his years of service, he sat as many Knesset committees and served in governmental positions as, let me just stick to the Deputy Minister of Communication and Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Welfare. He's married and has 5 children. Thank you very much for joining us. We will conduct this panel that it will be energetic, so I will ask you for short opening statements, but to be very short, 1 minute. I know it's challenging for politicians, also for journalists. Only 1 minute, and then we'll start with a little bit about what's going on around the Middle East and the US-Israeli relationship. Member of Michaeli.
A statement on what?
All right. So you know what? I suggest to do that.
Because
I will ask you the question, you give me short answers, and then we will proceed. I want to say something for the audience here. As we go along with this discussion, you can ask also a question. You have on your desk, you have a kind of pencils and sheets, and you can write your questions. The staff member of J Street will present them. They will pick from them the question that will be presented. And also you can text message a question if you have for the member of the Knesset. I think that we will have here in the screen a number where you can text your question, and that will also be from the J Street staff will be coming on to me, and I will present those questions to the member of Knesset. Let's start with the new development. And as an Israeli, you know that we always have new development, and the new development in the last few days is what's going on with Iran. Maybe I will start with you, member of Knesset Hanegbi, as someone that is very close to the Prime Minister and knows his position. Do you think Israel is doing the right thing by saying to everyone after the smile attack of Rouhani and his Foreign Minister Zarif, we will be the bad boys, we will be the party poopers that will say Iran is fooling everyone? I will tell you the truth.
Thank you. I'll immediately invade Iran, but I want to first thank you for doing something that I'm not used to. In Washington, usually the moderator having trouble pronouncing my name because these 2 syllables, Tzachi, it do not exist, unfortunately, in English. And
So usually you're what, Zahi?
so I'll tell you, my wife is from America, and we are married 30 years. She came from Hollywood, Florida 30 years ago and made Aliyah to Israel. But her mother, my mother-in-law, still calls me to this very day Kaki. So thank you for not...
No problem.
The Iranian issue is truly the most important agenda on our table for a long time, but mainly because of the new development that happened last week. And before that, the emerge of a new leader that, even though he is one of the closest people to the supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei, he is perceived as a moderate person. And what's happening now is really the fulfillment of our dreams, what we demanded all those years, that the diplomatic course will be the most effective one, thus allowing the world to be able to make sure that the Iranian nuclear or military nuclear project is dismantled. So we are happy that there is a new chance for diplomacy. Still, we are not party poopers because we don't know whether there is a reason for a party. So what the Prime Minister of Israel is saying, I think the President of the United States is also saying, is that it's not enough to smile and it's not enough to be pragmatic and moderate in rhetoric. We need to see action. I think this is exactly what the President said in his speech in the United States. I think the sentence was that conciliatory words will have to be matched by actions that are transparent and verifiable. This is what we stand for, and we know exactly what has to be done. We'll elaborate on it later, but we know exactly what has to be done in order to make sure that actions are being taken care of.
But you know, a few minutes ago, there was an interview with the Foreign Minister Zarif of Iran in ABC, and he said it's better to have a smile attack than a lie attack. And then he refers to what Netanyahu is saying for the last 23 years. He said, from 1991, Benjamin Netanyahu is saying Iran is going to have nuclear weapons in 6 months, and we still don't have nuclear weapons, and we don't want to have nuclear weapons. Israel is the one to have 2 warheads, nuclear warheads.
200.
What do you have? 200.
That's what he said.
This is what he said.
A little different.
Okay, to be clear on that. That's what he said.
According to
200.
foreign publishers,
Yes. So I'm asking you, what do you say to Foreign Minister Zarif of Iran?
I saw this declaration, and I feel sorry for it because it's contradicting the spirit of President Rouhani's approach, because Iran's problem is not Netanyahu's so-called lies. It's decisions of the IAEA, of the International Agency for Atomic Energy. It's decisions of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, and it's an acknowledgement of all the security agencies of the West that Iran is working and is doing its utmost effort to achieve a nuclear capacity. So I think that if we are about to witness a new approach from Iran, they have to put aside those frustrating remarks and make sure that the world is convinced, as their leader said, that they are not intending and not approaching the nuclear capacity.
Before I go to a position, I'll stay a little bit with coalition. So Member of Knesset Sheetrit, do you think, but there is something in what Zarif saying that maybe Netanyahu is a whistleblower, but is so veteran in being a whistleblower that no one listened to his whistle, and maybe something that refers to what Member of Knesset Yachimovich just said, maybe in the way that Israel is presenting the issue on Iran, there is some kind of a mistrust for the US president, for the government. Maybe that is something that is hurting the unique alliances between Israel and the United States.
No doubt the sanctions which operated against Iran create very big difficulties to the people in Iran and, of course, to the government as well. So maybe it's a reason for Rouhani to change his own attitude of the old regime of Ahmadinejad and try a different way. I think we should follow seriously and follow it closely to see if it is real, it's true, or a lie. I believe that most of the people remember that Israel with Iran have a totally different relationship in the past. During the Shah time, Israel was working in Iran, building roads, neighborhoods, a lot of other even cooperation in security and many other areas, until the United States forced the Shah to step down because they blame him he's not keeping human rights, and they get instead Khomeini. Iran is a threat, much more bigger threat to all the Arab states than Israel. And I think if Iran have a nuclear weapon, it will change all the Middle East, and especially the situation in the Arab world. Therefore, it is not only Israeli interest which will look at it as a threat to our existence. Not only Israelis will be deterred by this nuclear weapon, but all the world. And therefore, it is in world interest to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. I'm taking seriously the commitment of President Obama to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. I believe that the United States is the only one who have the real ability really to prevent it for long. It does say that if we will be under threat, we cannot use the option we have, and the option is on the table. But I hope that Rouhani change his own attitude. Mm-hmm. I believe that we should check it and give it a chance. We should not relate to it negatively immediately. I believe we should give it a chance. Maybe things can happen. Of course, I believe that we will follow closely what's going on in Iran, exactly as we do, United States is doing, Europe is doing. And I believe they cannot hide everything they want. Yeah. So maybe it is a good chance and a good era.
Thank you. Member of Knesset, Merav Michaeli from the opposition, from the Labour Party. Is there any opposition in these very delicate issues like Iran? Or this is the one issue, or maybe one of the few issues when you said in Israel there's no opposition and no coalition?
I think, unfortunately, there is not enough opposition on this issue in Israel. And I think it's time for the opposition to say out loud that wherever we can talk with whomever is willing to speak, that is what we should do. And I think nowadays Israel should give every possible backing and support to the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, when he is sensing that there is a possibility to actually reach a deal with Iran regarding the nuclear project. I think it is very important for the Western world and for the Arab world and for everyone actually to reach a deal with Iran. Now, if there is a possibility to do it, then we should just say yes. We should stop saying no and start saying yes.
But that isn't doing so. Are you being part of what Netanyahu is claiming that is, which is the big lie of Iran? This is exactly what he wants you to say. That he's speaking differently, that he's doing differently, and behind his back, he will continue developing his nuclear capabilities.
The option of attacking Iran or doing whatever else is necessary in order to prevent the nuclear project from continuing or from developing is always on the table. I mean, you know, it's obvious. You needn't go on and saying it all the time. And since I don't want to say if you want to shoot, because I don't want people to shoot in general, and certainly not right now in this position. But there's no, I mean, it's either if you're not, as long as you're not going for that option, you need to actually allow the possibility of reaching your goal in a diplomatic way. I mean, the goal is for Iran to not have nuclear weapon. The way to get there, if there is a diplomatic way to get there, then you should at least try it. Now, if they're lying, we'll find out, and we can always use the other way, but at least give a real chance to the option of speaking and reaching an agreement.
All right, let me try to take that to the Syrian issue. Member of Knesset Vaknin, I want to ask you, and I'll ask you in English, and then I will translate it to Hebrew. Do you trust the president, after what we've seen in Syria, the president of the United States, that he will act? And I want to ask you about the Israeli dilemma, the moral dilemma that we have. From one hand, as a country that, after 70 years after the Holocaust, what we should do when we see a dictator massacring his own people 300 kilometers from the heart of our city? Are we going to do nothing as we did in the last 2 years? Or should we act, not only ask others to act? And I asked that in Hebrew, האם אתה מאמין לאובמה אחרי הפעילות שלו בסוריה? ואני רוצה לשאול אותך על הדילמה של מדינה שהיא 70 שנה אחרי השואה, כשהיא רואה רודן שטובח בבני עמו 300 קילומטר מירושלים, האם אנחנו צריכים לפעול מבחינה מוסרית, או מבחינת האינטרס האישי שלנו לא לעשות כלום כמו שעשינו בשנתיים האחרונות, ורק לקרוא לאחרים לפעול?
אני אמרתי את הדברים בפאנל הקודם, שלדעתי כל האביב הערבי שאנחנו רואים בשנים האחרונות, מצרים, רואים את זה בלוב, רואים את זה בתוניס, סוריה, אנחנו במחשבה הראשונית אפילו שחלק מהעולם המערבי, שהדבר הזה הוא טוב. דעתי הייתה מלכתחילה שזה אסון גדול מאוד לכל העולם הערבי. וגם לנו.
Let me just translate. I've said it before that I think that's what Member of Knesset Vaknin said, that the whole thing of the Arab Spring, which the Western world, we see it as a part of it, is a good thing, and I'm from the start thought it's a bad thing and it's a disaster.
מכיוון שלצערי הרב, ברוב המקומות, אנחנו רואים שדווקא האסלאם הקיצוני הרדיקלי תופס את המקום. ובסוריה, אם ייפול השלטון, למרות שאני מצר על השימוש בנשק כימי כנגד אזרחים, אני חושב שזה דבר גרוע, אנחנו רואים את הדברים, אסור לנו להתערב, אבל רבותיי, אם אל-קאידה ייכנס שם בתוך המדינה, לצערי הרב, הנזק למזרח התיכון יהיה הרבה יותר קשה. רואים את זה עם התנועה האסלאמית, האחים המוסלמים במצרים, רואים את זה בכל פינה, רבותיי. האביב הערבי הוא לא כמו שאנחנו חשבנו, לצערי הרב, והוא אפילו ממית אסון על המזרח התיכון.
Unfortunately, Member of Knesset Vaknin is saying, we've seen that every place that we have election, the Islamic radical movement was raising up, and even when we look about Syria, and I'm saying I'm sorry that they use chemical weapons, if Al-Qaeda will take over Syria instead of Bashar al-Assad, that will be a disaster, and we can see that going over and over also in Egypt, that the Islamic Brotherhood is taking its power, and it's a disaster. That's why the Arab Spring is a disaster. Member of Knesset Ruth Calderon, following up this issue of Syria, maybe on the moral dilemma. Should we only act on our interest, our security interest, or should we act also about our moral duty as a Jewish people that are living in the Holocaust?
I don't think it's, first of all, I want to thank you for listening to us without subtitles. I don't know if our Israeli English is understandable, but thank you for your patience. I don't think it's my place to say whether we should fight or not. I don't know enough to say anything about that. But the thing I do understand, I think, and I think is the point here, is that it's a question of identity. And I think the way we see ourselves, and we saw ourselves in Israel for too many years, was the concept of a villa in the jungle, that we are European Jews living in the wilderness of the Middle East. And I think it's time for us to understand that we are an Eastern religion, not a Western religion. And that the Arab world and the Middle East world has so much that is close to us, that we share so much with them. We share the heroes, we share the narratives, we share a common history of Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov and the binding of Isaac and Ishmael. And once we learn to meet ourselves as Jews that come from this place and come to appreciate the Jews in Israel that came from Arab countries, we will, and for God's sake, learn Arabic after 65 years of learning it. I think it will be a time, and I think the members of Knesset on my both sides that do understand Jewish Arab culture and Arab culture could be the bridges to that. I think it will start a whole new conversation towards peace. So that is one piece of identity that I think is very important. And the other one, I come from the world of Jewish renewal and liberal Judaism, and thank you for being partners in that. And once we are now in coalition, and I must say I thank God for that too, I think it is our place not to do the same thing that was done to us by the Orthodox for so many years, but to find ways to work together with Shas and other religious parties and to build a Judaism in Israel that is not now only liberal, but is a place that is inclusive and lets all streams of Judaism feel at home and be Jewish in the way that is comfortable to them.
Thank you very much. Do you want to say something? Yes.
Regarding Syria, I just want to, I mean, the way you presented it as if there are two options, doing the right thing or doing the thing that is aligned with your interests.
All right. Now, maybe I'll make it more complicated.
Okay.
Should we act at all, or saying only to others to act on our moral duty? Because that's what the question is about, the dilemma between morality of someone killing his own people and our security interest, which is not doing nothing as we did in the last 2 years, and we're not intervening in the
Question is there something that you can point out as the right thing to do, even as far as intervening? Is there such a thing? I mean, are you sure that using force against Assad will bring the outcome that you wish?
Well, I didn't bring force.
I didn't. So,
for example,
it's not about saving.
No, for example, building a hospital on the border for everyone that is being wounded. This is something to do without force, and we didn't do that. So, do you think that we should or shouldn't?
Okay.
All right.
I'm counting to 10 in my mind. Yes, in my.
Okay. I would like to moving ahead with about the peace process.
But one should say that the people who have arrived at the border were taken care of by the army to a certain extent.
By various numbers.
Yes, well.
Okay.
It would have been, by the way, the thing that you have just described would have been an incredible experience, and I think that alone would have changed the whole paradigm in at least in the Mideast, if not in the world in general. We should, really, it's worth a try.
All right. I wonder, I would like...
May I say something about Syria? First, I think it must be said that Israel did what we can do in this situation, which is what we call the good fence. Israel opened the hospital on the border of the Golan Heights and received over there every Syrian who is injured, doesn't matter if he's from the rebellions or from the government, and they get treated in this hospital. Those who are in a bad situation are transferred to hospitals in Israel and also bringing their own families from Syria. And they get treated. We have tens of Syrians in our hospitals in Israel. I think in our situation, any other action which will be fighting or anything will be exactly translated differently than what we mean. Even if we mean good, it will be because of the situation between us and the Arab world. It will be translated as an act of aggressive act. This shows you the double standard of the world. Look, the situation is that the Syrian government killed something like 140,000 people of their own people. So now the governments the world had been involved and stopped. They want to stop maybe within a year to take a weapon. In the meantime, they're saying, as a matter of fact, go ahead, you can kill your people in a conventional weapon. Look at the world's double standard. If Israel would kill one Syrian or one Palestinian, it would be a turmoil. That happened in the Holocaust as well. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what happened in Syria. Nobody cares during the Holocaust what happened to Jews in the world. So therefore, I'm just trying to see that when Israel is protecting its own security, we're doing it because no other one else in the world we really can guarantee our existence. We have to do it ourselves. That's the lesson we learned at that time from the Holocaust. And what we can do maybe is to enlarge our help to Syrians. I mean, especially human help, humanitarian help. That's what you do.
So about Iran, you want to say something? So I'll ask something, Tzachi Hanegbi, and then you can refer to that. following up what Mayor Sheetrit said, that no one will take care of our security by ourselves. And Netanyahu is repeating this Jewish item, Imena Nili Mili, if there's no one, for me, it's only me to stand. What does it mean, practically? Is Israel saying to the world, no matter what, if we think that the Iranian, after their small attack, is going too much on the uranium enrichment track, we will attack? Is an Israeli military attack is still on the table?
I have to remind us all that the expression used by Hillel HaZaken, old Hillel, was not only im en anili mili, but the seifa, the end of this sentence was Uchshani latzmi ma'ani, and what am I if I'm only by myself? So it's a dialectic phrase, and it's not only to show that I'm strong, but also...
That's true, but the Prime Minister is only quoting the first part.
Exactly. So I am sure Netanyahu knows the whole phrase. And when it comes to Iran, I think that the beginning of the phrase is relevant. And this relates to your question. Because we are hoping that we won't have to even consider the military option like we did once formally and the second time according to the book of President Bush, but with the Syrian reactor. But we hope that we won't have to use it because Iran is not Iraq, is not Syria, and there's definitely going to be aftershock and ramifications and escalation, and we'll have to challenge retaliation of various sorts that we cannot really predict. You ask me if we will eventually be able to use the military option. The answer is yes. We are powerful enough to do it. Of course, we are not as powerful as the United States, and it's not going to be as effective as a diplomatic solution, because diplomatic solution puts an end to the threat for a long time. An Israeli attack, successful as it is, can only postpone the threat for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but it might be revived again by any Iranian regime. But I heard, I think Merav said, related to if you want to shoot, shoot. I looked in YouTube to be sure what is the expression in the good, the old, and the ugly. There's many young people here, I don't know if they ever saw this classic Western of Clint Eastwood, but Eli Wallach, sitting in the bath after shooting the bad guy, said, if you need to shoot, shoot. Not if you want to, because we don't want to, but we might need to.
That's nice. The whole movie is a criticism about using of force, but that's something else that...
Altogether.
Altogether.
Yes.
Member of Knesset Vaknin, you wanted to say something about the Iranian issue.
חודשיים לפני מלחמת לבנון השנייה עליתי לנאום בכנסת ואמרתי שדרום לבנון זה חבית חומר נפץ. וכשהיא תתפוצץ, היא תתפוצץ לנו על הפנים, כמי שגר על הגבול, גבול לבנון, שירת 5 שנים בגבול הזה. אמרתי שהדבר הזה יהיה בעוכרנו והטילים יגיעו לחיפה ולטבריה. אחרי חודשיים מתחילה המלחמה, ואז אומרים ניבא ולא יודע מה שניבא. אני אומר...
I'll translate. 2 months before the second Lebanon war, I was having a speech in the Knesset, and I said when it will blow in our face this explosive, it will be explosives in our face, and there will be missiles going through Haifa and other places in Israel. As someone that lives there, as a member of Knesset Vaknin, live in a city very nearby the border with Lebanon, and serving there as a military. And after 2 weeks, the war started, and people said, he said, and it is exactly what happened.
צריך להבין שאיראן מחמשת את החיזבאללה עם טילים היום. כל מרכז החיים שלנו, תל אביב, רמת גן, מכוסה בטילים של החיזבאללה שמקבל מאיראן. איראן היא גורם שלילי מאוד. אם לאיראן תהיה אפשרות של כוח גרעיני, הדבר הזה מסוכן לא רק לישראל, הדבר הזה מסוכן לכל העולם. אני אומר את זה בצורה חד משמעית. אני חושב שאנחנו לא צריכים לדבר פחות, אולי לעשות יותר.
Member of Knesset Vaknin is saying, you have to remember, Iran is arming Hezbollah with rockets that are aiming the hearts of life in Israel, the cities like Tel Aviv and others. And Iran is a threat, and if Iran will be a nuclear power, it's a threat not only to Israel, but to the region by itself, to others. And I think we need, that's what Member of Knesset Vaknin said, speak less and do more. I want to go back to the negotiation with the Palestinian. And maybe I'll start with you, Member of Knesset Michaeli. Do you believe Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said over and over again that he is for two-state solution, and he has a negotiation with the Palestinian, he wants to resolve it and to have an agreement?
I want to believe him, by all means. I want it to be true. I want him to reach an agreement with the Palestinians, have a safe, secure, and a good agreement for everyone. I really want him to do that. So it's not about believing. Yes, I have every reason not to believe him because he's been saying it for a long time. In general, I will say that the right wing in general has adopted the language of the left. For too long now, they have been saying all the right words, peace, two states, negotiations, but not doing it, actually, which left something which unfortunately I think has left the left side of the political map in Israel somewhat without something new to offer. I'm not sure, though, that the agreement that Netanyahu has in mind, if he has one in mind, which, again, I'm not guessing, I want to believe that he does, I'm not sure that is the one that's in the best interest of Israel, and I'll tell you why. I think Israelis in general have grown used to using the concept of separation, speaking about the Palestinians, regarding, and most of you probably read Peter Beinart's piece about how we just prefer not to see the Palestinians, to sort of ignore their existence. Peter Beinart in, I think, New York Review of Books, yes. We have grown accustomed to speaking about separation, and there's this idiom in Israel, you know, they are there and we are here, separating by a wall, by a border, by something just separating. And I think this is an illusion. We have to realize it is an illusion. And because there is no way to separate. We are all here. So we are all on this piece of land.
So I want to challenge you. So maybe you were on the same page like Member of Knesset Danon from the Likud or Tzipi Chotoveli saying we all together, let's have one state solution. We will be all citizens of the same.
I'm afraid the Member of Knesset
Isn't
Danon,
the whole idea of the two-state solution is the separation?
No, I think when Member of Knesset Danon is speaking about one state, he is speaking of a severe separation in one state, within the same state, which is totally not what I have in mind.
Oh.
What I'm saying is that the two states need to be an arrangement in which we can live together in peace, not a separation as if not seeing one another. This is what it needs to be. I'm not sure that that is what Netanyahu has in mind, but again, as I said, I am all for it. By all means, let him bring peace upon us. As soon as possible, by the way.
Member of Knesset Sheetrit, I want to use your experience and Tzachi Hanegbi's experience also as well to solve one of the biggest dilemmas and questions that I have. How come that every prime minister that has been elected by the right wings ends with the two-state solution written in his mouth? He's saying, I will not do it. And that's what happened to Arik Sharon. That's what happened to Benjamin Netanyahu. That's what happened to Ehud Olmert. Even Tzipi Livni, if people don't remember, she's coming from the Likud. So how comes the right wing in Israel, and you were part of it in the past, didn't succeed in bringing an alternative to the to the left-wing program or idea that they so hate?
You know, to dream is a very legal for everyone to dream. And there is a big dream for people on the right-wing party to believe in greater Israel, because historically it was true. Israel was much greater. And people were believing, especially when we come to those territories, not by idea of trying to occupy them in intention, but from no other alternative, because we were forced to be in a war, a 67 war, and therefore that's the reason we arrived over there. And in the beginning, it was euphoria, not only in the right parties, only in the Labour Party. I want to remind you that the Labour Party was in government that time. They were starting to build all the settlements in the West Bank. So there was an euphoria in Israel. One of the only leaders of Israel which have far seen the future was Ben-Gurion, which after 67 war, he said, now we have to get out of the West Bank. But nobody wants to listen to him. Now it takes time. In the meantime, you see, we build so much and we come to a big confusion. And in the meantime, when people became to be prime ministers, and it doesn't matter if they come from the right, they come to see the light. Because when they are prime minister, they understand that they are not alone on the yard. There are many, many other players on the same yard, and they have to come to some agreement with people. That's the reason why people change their own attitude. It happens to the Likud, happens to Begin. If I was there as a member of the Likud to say that I want to leave Sinai before Begin left Sinai, they would throw me out of the Likud. And then when Begin did it, it passed in a large majority of Israel. Then he comes with Shamir. Shamir was the only one who, I want to remind you, during the Gulf War, we got something like 40 or 60 missiles, Scud missiles from Iraq over Israel. And Shamir decided against all his advisors not to react, to restrain himself. And he said restraint is a power. And Israel did not do anything in Iraq, which was found out to be good. Then you come to Netanyahu, which started as well with an accession that he was totally against Oslo Agreement. I want to remind you that on that matter, I became to a clash with him for a few years, because I'm the only one of the Likud who stays from the Likud who did not object to Oslo Agreement and supported it. And that time, Bibi did not accept it. I can tell you a story, I don't have the time, but
It's short, very short.
after a big clash, one day before the election in which he elected to be prime minister first time, I got a telephone from him after we didn't speak for almost 2 years. And he asked me to come with him, and I said, what is the miracle? How come did you call me? He said, I'm going to make foreign press, and I would like to come with me. I'm going to announce, I find out in the polls that if I'm not supporting Oslo, and I will not announce that I'm going to meet Arafat, we lose the election. I said, okay, I'm be glad to be with you. He wanted me to be in this press conference, and I went with him. There he announced that he's going to recognize Oslo and meet Arafat. And to remind you, as prime minister, he signed one agreement. He get out of Hebron. So prime minister come to a conclusion that he have the responsibility to see the future of Israel. He cannot ignore it. He have to face the facts. And today, you ask Merav if she believes in Netanyahu. I believe that Netanyahu now is on the verge to make a history or to be a history. This is the situation. I think it is very hard to stress enough the importance of making peace for Israel. There is nothing more important than to create peace with the Palestinians. This is the only obstacle which prevents us from having a good relationship with all the 65 Islam countries, which come in expression of the Arab Initiative, says making peace with the Palestinians, we will willing to make with you a total peace, normalization, that will be the end of the conflict. In my opinion, Prime Minister of Israel should say clearly, loudly, I'm willing to establish Palestinian state on the basis of 67 borders. And agree.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the member of your party, Tzipi Livni, that was speaking here as a keynote speaker, never said that.
Yes.
What do you mean never said
67 borders with
Your government hasn't said
with
that.
swap.
swap.
Okay.
Of course we swap.
No, they don't.
Nobody's saying, when I
They
say on the
didn't
basis
say
of
that.
67 borders, I don't mean literally 67 borders. It's
No,
impossible.
no.
I'm I'm speaking on the same quantity of territory.
This was
swap.
never said
Wait
by
a
your
minute.
government. I'm
Iran,
sorry,
wait a minute.
my
Wait a
dear.
minute. I think.
I mean, if that was what Netanyahu would have said, we would have been in a whole different situation right now, by all means.
Let me finish.
Is that the Labour Party position?
I'm saying that.
Of course. Always been.
I'm saying.
Are you sure? All right.
Ask Shelly, she's here.
I'm saying not literally 67 borders, but the same quantity of territory. The facts are that not only the Palestinians accept the swap, also the Arab League accept the swap. And then more than that, I'm saying and clearly and loudly, I agree the Palestinians will have their own capital in some of the Palestinian neighborhoods in Jerusalem.
Okay, great.
One more sentence.
No, just a second.
One more sentence. If Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, will say it, he will take off what we call the carpet out of the leg of the Palestinians. They will be in a corner either to decide really to sign peace with Israel, or that they will be blamed by all the world that they don't want peace. Because today we are looking at the world like the bad guys. Why they have all the sympathy of the world? Because they seem like to be underdog. And I say, why not? Let them build their own country. That could be a very democratic state which will live in peace with Israel. This is the best security for Israel.
Member of Knesset Calderon. Sorry to pick you on that, but where is Yesh Atid on the issues of the peace process? It seems like this is some kind of evading the party. Can you describe you as a left-wingers or right-wingers?
Yesh Atid is center, and it's very clear in
and what does it mean?
agenda. No, that's what we are. We're not left and we're not right. In our agenda, it says on the top that we are for a two-state solution. I think that morally, it is wrong and can't be Jewishly, you can't be agreed as a Jew to occupy another people. Occupation is a sin. Now, I personally am in favor of a two-state solution because I believe that Israel should be a nation state. I want it to stay a state where you speak Hebrew and you can educate in school for Jewish education, and the territory is Jewish and the language is Hebrew and the symbols are Jewish. And in order to do that, we have to be a majority, and we are majority only in the two-state solution. In the one-state solution, we are not going to be a majority. And once I want to be a nation, a Jewish nation state, and at the same time democratic, we have to be realistic and understand that the borders that we can be a proud Jewish majority is in the two-state solution.
Member of Knesset Vaknin, before I'm going to the questions from the audience, we know that Rabbi Ovadia is in hospital. We all wish him well. He once said that keeping the mind is important than keeping the land, keeping the lives. How can you describe Shas party under the leadership of Aryeh Deri right now? Because the previous leader of Shas, Eli Shai, was very right-winger. Is that the same case of Shas today?
ראשית, אני רוצה לאחל מפה לרב עובדיה רפואה שלמה.
רפואה שלמה.
ולכל חולי עמו ישראל גם. תראה.
I want to wish the Rabbi Ovadia complete illness.
הוא אינטרס ישראלי ממדרגה ראשונה. וכל התמהמהות שלנו בתהליך הזה יביא אותנו למחיר יותר יקר בסופו של התהליך.
Peace is the vital interest of Israel, and every time that we delay that, we pay a higher price for that.
אני חושב, אמרתי את זה מספר פעמים, שאנחנו צריכים להחליט. או שאנחנו מספחים אלינו 5 מיליון פלסטינים מעזה ויהודה ושומרון, נותנים להם תעודת זהות כחולה, והם אזרחים ישראלים לכל דבר, ועם כל מה שמגיע לכל אזרח. או שניתן להם את המדינה שלהם עם כל מה שצריך, ואני חושב שזה אינטרס ישראלי ממדרגה ראשונה להפריד בינינו לבינם.
We need to make a decision. Either we are taking 5 million, I think there are 4, but 5 million Palestinians from Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria, give them an Israeli IDs, make them citizens, or we should give them their own state and separate for them. And I think this is the vital interest of Israel.
אני חושב שגם הרב עובדיה, בין הראשונים שביטא את הנושא של מוטב שנחזיר קרקע תמורת החיים. חיים יותר שווים מכל דבר אחר.
Rabbi Ovadia said that lives are more important than anything, also from land.
הבעיה המרכזית שאני רואה בתהליך, שהמנהיגים, ואני אומר את זה גם לראש הממשלה וגם לאבו עבאס, שניהם צריכים לקבל החלטות. אני מאמין שאם ביבי נתניהו רציני בנושא של התהליך, הוא יוכל להעביר את התהליך הזה, אף על פי שהיום כבר עשו חוק משאל עם, שגם שם אני חושב הוא יעבור, גם למרות שבליכוד יש חלק מאותם חבר'ה של הקצה הימני.
וש"ס תתמוך בו?
אנחנו לא בקואליציה, אתה יודע, אנחנו משוחררים.
אבל אתם בכנסת.
ואני יכול להגיד לך.
אם הוא מביא הסכם לכנסת, אתם תומכים בו?
אני יכול להגיד דבר אחד, שכל תהליך שלום עד היום שהתבצע, אנחנו תמכנו בו, מכיוון שככה הורו לנו הרבנים. ואני מאמין שגם הנושא הזה יובא למועצת החכמים. ברוב המקרים, גם אותם חברי כנסת שאתה הזכרת, איתלי, ויש את ניסים זאב, שהוא מאוד בדעות ברורות כימני, יקבלו את דעתו של הרב ובצעו, אנחנו נצביע כמקשה אחת בעד השלום.
Just let me translate. We had a small discussion here. Member of Knesset, Vaknin, said that this is time to make decision. Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, and Netanyahu needs to make a decision. And if Netanyahu will take the decision, he's sure that he will have the support of the Knesset. I asked him, will Shas vote in favor of peace? And he said, we're not in the coalition. But I said, going to come to the Knesset anyway. So he said that if you look at the past, every time that a peace issue was raised, coming to the council of rabbinate that running Shas, they voted in favor of peace, and I'm sure that also this time they will vote in favor of a peace agreement. Just let me conclude. Before I'm going, I want to conclude one sentence from Tzachi Hanegbi from the Likud after this peace concert here.
Very peacefully.
Exactly.
I'm returning back to the two fundamental questions. What happens to a prime minister from the right that becoming a left-wing language? And do you believe Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, is serious and this time is over the threshold of bringing real agreement with the Palestinians?
Do we have 2 hours to...
No, we have 2 minutes, okay. But I'm sure that you can do that.
First of all, this panel was a little bit too harmonious. And
yeah,
so it's about time somebody will be booed, and I volunteer to be the party spoiler, pooper. I'll tell you, first of all, I think every Palestinian leader, every American president, every member of this panel knows that Israel will never go back exactly to the 67 borders. It's a known thing, like we do know that the two-state solution is the only relevant solution, and it's known to everybody, including to those right-wing members of Knesset that are very ideological and very powerful in their vocal opposition, but I think they understand that the alternative, either escalation and bloodshed or one state, is not an option if we want to keep a Jewish Zionist state. So there are things that we know. What we also know, I'm not sure that everybody here will agree with me, but I know that Prime Minister Netanyahu has shifted through the years, like every leader. I wouldn't say every right-wing leader. I think every leader that comes to sit in the office in Israel, maybe elsewhere, understands the limitations of the original ideology that brought him there. Rabin faced it when he was the prime minister. Barak faced it. Peres, they didn't get out of Judea and Samaria. They didn't approve the settlements. They understood. It's a gradual process, and they have to go towards their goal, but it's nothing that can be achieved in no time, or that 100% of the pure ideology will be implemented eventually. So I think Netanyahu is not the Netanyahu that you and I knew 20 years ago. I am not the same person I used to be 20 years ago. Nobody here is the same person. What is standing behind, or what is standing to prevent the two-state solution at the moment is not Netanyahu. I think that it's one major thing. I'll be very, very short about it. I think I'm the only member of the Likud leadership now, besides Netanyahu, that had meetings with both Abu Mazen and Salam Fayyad and many other Palestinian leaders. And I'm convinced that they are genuine partners, they mean what they say, and they want peace. I'm convinced. But one question that I asked them, maybe they were not able to answer me because I'm not the prime minister and I'm not the one cutting the deal in the end, was about the issue of refugees. I asked them again and again, I told them what I tell you, this is the major issue. If the Palestinians will disassociate themselves from this, in their eyes, legitimate dream, in our eyes, false dream, but the dream that refugees will flow back into original old small Israel, this is a non-starter. If they will understand that they have to make the historic compromise, like we did, giving or agreeing to the idea that we will not be sovereign in the places where our people were born, in the places where Jews, kings and prophets used to live centuries ago, but we understand it's not going to happen because there are millions of Arabs living there. We're not going to kill them, to expel them, to convert them. These is where they will have their sovereignty eventually. If the Palestinian leadership will understand that their big historic compromise is to give up this idea of right of return, we will be able, in a short while, to reach an agreement. So they never were able to give me a clear-cut answer about it.
But I have to challenge you about that because President Mahmoud Abbas, in an interview that I made with him, said, I'm willing to come to Tzfat as a visitor.
Yes, it was a courageous declaration, but listen to the words. He said, I was born in Sefad, Tzfat in Hebrew, and I know I am not going back. But he kept the question open for if it's going to be individual, the voluntary decision of each and every refugee whether to come back or not.
So you think the refugees is the main stumbling block?
I think we will be able to give a good answer, a win-win answer to almost every issue, including Jerusalem issue, including the settlement issue. Every issue have a compromise that can be relevant to both sides. The issue of refugees cannot be compromised. It's either here or there. And I hope that these 9 months that are now the timetable for the negotiation will find ourselves finding a pragmatic understanding of the Palestinian in this issue. I think all the other issues can be solved.
Right. Looking at your questions, I see that many of them were being asked during this panel, but I would like to ask one, please, very short answer because we need to conclude. How should Israel deal with Hamas, and what security measure can Israel take so that the West Bank doesn't become another Gaza-type situation? Meir?
Hamas refused to accept the existence of Israel. Their ideology is to eliminate the state of Israel. Therefore, matter of fact, we're not talking to them unless they will accept the terms of the quartet and recognize Israel and recognize the agreements that have been signed with the PLO. Otherwise, they will stay as our enemy, and we take care of the enemy exactly as you take care of the enemy. When we are negotiating today with Abu Mazen, we take in consideration that maybe we'll have peace just with Abu Mazen. We are not sure about what's going on with the Hamas. And therefore, from my point of view, as far as the Hamas do not put down their arm and stop launching missiles against Israel, they are an enemy, and that's the way we relate to them.
Another question from the audience. In your opinion, what role should American Jews have in relations to Israeli policy, politics, and society? This is a very open question, so if any one of you want to answer that very quick.
I'll just start.
Yes, Member
First of all, I just want to add about the language that was left and became right. I want to quote Yair Lapid, the leader of Yesh Atid, that says, not living together in harmony, as you said, but divorcing well. Divorcing is not about separating because you have children together, but living in peace and with the, 2 days the children are at each home.
Every second, every other
Mutual
weekend.
custody.
Yes.
Yeah, mutual custody.
Who will get Bibi? That is the question.
About
the answer is simple, you.
I think Bibi could be a trusted father on his 2 days. I would trust him. Now, about your role in our life. I believe Israel is the state of the Jewish people in the world. So we are all partners. We all have a share in this amazing, project. And I think you should and do have a voice and authority in the amount that you have responsibility. And I have a wild idea that all of us, all young Jews in the world, not young, but all Jews in the world, at the age of 18 will give 2 years of service, either military service in Israel or civil service or community service, but it cannot be that half of the Israeli Jews give 2 years of service and people the same amount of voice. I do want to hear Jewish people's voice. We need it desperately. I think you have part of the answer of the complex equation of a Jewish state in Israel, but I would urge you to do more than just have the authority and take the opportunity of responsibility.
I want to ask you something that the audience didn't ask, maybe they didn't dare to ask. A few years ago, J Street was perceived, and the organization sitting here was like an enemies of the state of Israel. What happened that, there's a member of the Likud, a member of Shas, but J Street is becoming more accepted?
I just want to say before Tzachi answers that coming here does not mean that all of us are J Street. It means that it's important for me to speak to these people, to listen and to learn, and to say what I believe. I think it's important that all of us will have open conversations, whether we completely agree and whether we have disputes.
Michaeli?
I was privileged to attend the first J Street convention here in DC 5 years ago. I spoke on a panel that was titled, "Where Did All the Peace Movements Go?" So first of all, thank God they did not go anywhere. They are alive and well. Peace is coming shortly. But I want to tell you a story. When me and my non-husband, who's present here,
So there are 2 members of the Likud here.
Okay. Toy is not a member of Likud.
Right, okay.
Toy.
You started.
The Likud is too moderate for him.
We come to the States. The reason I mentioned him is because we come to New York twice a year. And at my time in New York back then, I came to know many of the J Street founders and the grassroots people who started J Street. And that's how I came acquainted with this new amazing thing. And I wrote an op-ed about it and sent it to Israel and then went to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and my op-ed said the following. It said, "We in Israel are aware of 2 kinds of American Jews. We know the ones who are organized in all the foundations and the APACs and whatever. And we know those who don't care, who don't mind, couldn't care less, don't know about Israel, have no idea, detached. But there is apparently a third kind who care and who want to be a part, but they think differently and they want their voices amplified and they want their voices out there and heard, and this is what's happening now with the new J Street, etc. And I said, exactly, and that it was important for us to recognize and to realize and to be in touch also with this part of American Jewry. And as I said, I sent this op-ed, went to bed. I woke up in the morning with an email from one of my editors saying, you have no idea what you're talking about. This is so marginal. This is so just passing by. There is nothing like this. There is only the organized conservative Jews and the ones who don't care. There is no such real thing as J Street. Well, apparently, he was wrong.
Last word, Member of Knesset Tzachi Hanegbi.
Thank you. When I happily accepted the invitation of J Street to participate in this convention, I was bombarded with emails and statements on my Facebook wall and many other ways of communication in a polite way, asking me why am I the first Likud member or leader legitimizing an organization that is committed to the destruction of Israel, that is financed by Iran, that one of its founders, a guy named Levy, I never met him, announced once that the establishment of the State of Israel was a bad mistake, and so on and so forth. And I was frightened, maybe I made a mistake. So I went into the website of J Street, and you, also J Street, you in the internet. And I got encouraged for my unknowledgeable decision at the beginning, because I saw how wrong those people are, and I understood how important this organization is, because we can dispute on many, many issues like we do in the Knesset. But with all due respect, you don't need legitimacy from the Likud or from me or from any one of us. The legitimacy that you have derives from your love to the State of Israel, from your commitment to the security of Israel, from your passionate desire to see peace for us and for our kids. So as a father of twins who are both in combat units and are still in the army, and a father of an older kid who is already after the army, but he was an officer in a special unit, and all of them, unfortunately, will be called to any confrontation. I believe that we together have an important vision and mission to achieve peace. I know I'm not going to attend your next annual convention because, as Jeremy Ben-Ami said, you are going to dismantle after the two-state solution vision will be implemented, but hopefully I see you again. Thank you.
With these words, I would like to say thank you to the members of the panel. Thank you very much. And as a journalist, I want to tell you that it's not only politics. Timing is everything. So tomorrow there's the meeting with Prime Minister and President Obama, and afterwards there's the meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and Joe Biden, and right after the meeting with Joe Biden, he's coming here to J Street, so maybe we will know a lot more. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. תודה רבה.